Welcome everybody to Learning Life's Family Diplomacy Dialogues. As you probably all know, my name is Paul Lachelier. I'm the founder and director of Learning Life. We are a Washington, D.C. based nonprofit that runs these monthly dialogues every third Sunday in March to November. And I'm going to serve as the moderator for this dialogue. These dialogues are part of the Family Diplomacy Initiative. The Family Diplomacy Initiative connects people worldwide across lines of country, class, race, religion, via the internet to share and learn together about families and citizen diplomacy with an eye to developing a group of trained, what we call family diplomats and family diplomacy ambassadors to advocate for a more caring world via media, businesses, nonprofits, and governments. And I will provide you a link with more information where you can where you can learn more about what we do, and how you can get involved. I'm going to place in the Zoom chat right now a couple of things that, including the agenda and a request that you introduce yourself in the Zoom chat. And then I'm going to also share some information about captioning because we are going to be operating in two different languages today, Spanish and English. And so for some people will be speaking Spanish, so you'll need to activate your captions and make sure that your captions should be both, you're going to be speaking in your language and then have the translation in your language. So if you're speaking in English and you want to read English, you'll want to activate English on the hearing and the speaking. Hold on a second. I'm going to post into the Zoom chat some instructions here. Um, okay. The agenda today is I'm doing these introductions. I'll tell you about the captioning in a moment. Then we're going to hear some context, actually from Adrian Mata, who's with us, and Cornay, who is joining us, Cornay Davis, who is joining us from South Africa, who is an expert on gender-based violence. Adrian will go first, providing some context based upon a UN report. I'll have him share screen, and then Cornay will provide some context as well. This is fairly brief. I've asked each of them to speak for just about 3 minutes. Um, We will then shift to perspectives from different countries in the world. We are happy to have here with us the Fundación Levántate Mujer, which is an organization based in Bolivia focused on gender-based violence. They're going to be speaking and providing some perspective on their work. We also have Sandy Cabrera Olivas, who is joining us from Arizona but is from Mexico and will be speaking from her perspective as a survivor of gender-based violence. And then we are also going to be hearing from Maria Jareta, who is based in Brazil, but she will be providing some perspective on what's going on in Brazil. And then we may have, I'm hoping I have to get some other people to make sure that they're online in this discussion, but we may hear from some others. I think Leroy, I don't know if Leroy, who's joining us from Liberia, is planning on speaking as well. Leroy, are you with us? Okay, Leroy may, yep.
Yes, Paul, I'm here.
And did you want to likewise
Are you
provide
getting
some?
me?
Yes, we can hear you. I think there's some delay, but in when you hear what I'm saying. But nonetheless, do you want to provide perspective from Liberia?
Yeah, sure. If I'm given the opportunity, I will provide
Okay.
perspective on that.
Okay. And if anybody else does want to provide perspective from their country, well, basically, in this third part, perspectives from different countries, we'll have you speak, and then it's going to be open discussion. We encourage you. I've asked all of our interns to ask questions, to post comments in the Zoom chat. You are very much encouraged to post comments and questions in the Zoom chat, because I will look over those and have you, if you have a question, I'll have you just voice your question at the appropriate moment. Okay, so before we get to Adrian and Cornay, so Adrian joining us from the United States, Cornay from South Africa, I am going, and who are going to give this kind of broader international perspective on gender-based violence. I am going to provide you some instruction on the captioning in case you don't have it set up, because all of you will need to activate the captioning if you don't have it set up. So I'm going to share my screen for a moment and thank one of our interns, Olivia, for having um, created this short guide essentially to how to use the captioning. Okay, does everybody see my screen? So
Yeah.
at the bottom of your screen here, you should see a show captions um, uh, icon. You should click that icon and it will open up. And let me just expand this so that you can see this, but you'll see my speaking language and my caption language. You should see both of those things. For most of you, you want those to be on English, because you'll be presumably trying to understand and speak in English. But for the rest of you, you may want it to Spanish, because you'll be speaking in Spanish and then wanting to read what other people are saying in Spanish. Is that clear? Does anybody have any questions on that? But if you have not set it up, you should all be doing that, because otherwise, you will not be understanding, unless you speak both languages, you won't be understanding the what's being said when some people are speaking in English or Spanish. I'm going to briefly ask our Spanish speakers if they have it set up. Uh, Mauge y los otros que hablan español, ¿está bien? Todo funciona con los subtítulos?
Sí, 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 ya lo he podido configurar. Alfredo me ha ayudado. Gracias.
Perfecto, gracias. Am, y otros en español, si hay otros que no hablan inglés. Angélica Linares Chinuri, ¿hablas inglés también?
Sí, sí,
Paul,
buenas tardes. No, yo hablo español. Justo acabo de ingresar
Ok,
y no sabía tanto lo que estaban hablando, pero sí, yo hablo español.
ok. Mauge, Angélica, ¿se conoces?
Sí, sí, así es. Sí, le
Ok.
conozco a ese modo.
Bueno, ella puede explicar, pero acabamos de explicar un poco cómo abrir los subtítulos para ti, pero es abajo en el Zoom. Y ella o Andrea, uno de nuestros pasantes, puede ayudarte con esto, Angélica. Okay,
Ya, ya, bueno, gracias.
we are going to get started with this dialogue on gender-based violence with Adrian Mata, who is joining us from the Washington, D.C. area, was one of our interns, is now one of our family diplomacy ambassadors. Adrian.
Thank you so much, Dr. Lachilier. I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen. Everybody, I'm just gonna show a bit of the article I was looking into, and then I'll link it afterwards if you want any more information. So let me see if this works. Can
Great.
everybody see?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So, thank everybody for coming in today. I'm excited for this dialogue. It's a very serious topic, but one that needs discourse, one that needs more talking about. Before I get into the specifics of this article, very briefly, it is important to acknowledge that gender-based violence does affect both genders, both men and women. It affects women disproportionately, though, which is why I think it's natural for them to be the center of discussion, and they should be the center of discussion. Briefly on the men's side, though, I was looking into it, and some scholars say that information is actually somewhat hard to find on statistics of men experiencing gender-based violence. Um, Upwards of 90+% of the incidences go unreported because of social stigmas, conceptualizations of masculinity, and some other factors. But that's just a bit of context on that. And now I want to get into, like I said, the women are disproportionately affected, and it's extremely important for us to talk about them. One thing this article did a very good job about was describing how large the scope of this problem is, right? So an estimated 840 million women, excuse me, have experienced physical and or sexual intimate partner violence, non-partner sexual violence, or both at least in their life. And this is a statistic based on 15-year-olds and older. So this means about 1 in 3 women worldwide, 30% have experienced this. That is not only a staggering statistic, but it shows that this, even though it has regional contexts, truly is a global issue, right? Not only that, but we've seen many of our global issues make progress towards equality over the last several decades. This is not one of them, right? So over the last 2 decades, this statistic is largely unchanged, right? So we've seen since 1970, right? Poorer countries become more economically powerful. We've seen conflict resolutions be successful. But this is an issue that has stayed stagnant for several decades. And though it is technically declining at a 0.2% annual decline, that is not any noticeable change. Lastly, I want to point out some of the regional disparities, right? So what is causing disproportionate effect in different regions around the world? And this article pointed out three main things. So income, low income regions are experiencing this to an adverse rate. Uh, Conflict. So are you in an area that has recently been in conflict, maybe a civil war, maybe an interstate war? Are you in a humanitarian phase? That makes a difference. And finally, climate vulnerable settings, right? So the region you're born in, right, also provides some context for how bad the problem is in your immediate area. Lastly, this is something that I think we can get more into during our discussion, right? I just want to point out how big social norms can be an issue. So this mentioned on the men's side, what are the social norms that we're having put into an echo chamber? An echo chamber is essentially I say something and it just keeps coming back to me. So we're in digital spaces, we're in YouTube chats, we're in Discord chats, online where all these misogynistic ideas are just getting pushed back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, and it gets amplified, right? So, in what ways are the social norms, both on the men's side and the women, how are they upholding these disparities and how are they perpetuating this violence? Again, I'm going to link the article down below, but this is just some broad information about why this is such a global issue. Thank you.
Fantastic, Adrian, for providing us a brief but really informative background here. Um, Let me just see here. And yes, so Cornet, Davis, and is it? But
Enough.
Okay, okay. Is it Cornet's an associate professor in the Department of Strategic Communications at the University of Johannesburg in South Africa. She is going to be our resident expert today, kind of providing perspective on gender-based violence because that's her area of expertise. And so we're going to come back to her on a number of occasions here during the dialogue. She'll be responding to some of your comments. But I wanted her to provide some kind of introduction as well, introductory thoughts. Cornet.
Good evening. Yes, While I'm in South Africa, whom some of you may know has been dubbed the rape capital in the world, I have been collaborating in multiple studies in different countries in Africa. We've done some research or report for SADC, and I've collaborated in Canada, and Aristides Haravorna, who's in Spain, and other colleagues who are in Italy, who I've just had a visit from Professor Monacelli from University of Parma. So when I speak of the prevalence of gender-based violence, I have a global perspective as well. Everything Adrian said, of course, is true. We all have these statistics and facts. We are aware of the problem not dissipating, but rather accelerating. To give you some context about South Africa, there have been many factors similar to what Adrian has been saying, and obviously the predominant ideology of patriarchy that still reigns. While Adrian observed that it's more prevalent in lower socioeconomic sectors, we do know that it's representative across all sectors. We have done some research in the private sector to raise awareness, all in effort to educate and inform people, because as Adrian said, generally more than 90% of cases of GBV are never reported. In South Africa, you've got other factors such as lack of trust in authorities, the legal system failure. The government in our country has developed a national strategic plan. It's appointed a national council for which board members have not yet appointed. But despite all these interventions, we see the problem escalating. I will give you an example of a tremendous problem in South Africa is that there's been reported in December and in January this year, December last year, about the increasing prevalence of child pregnancy. So we have had a number escalating to, I think the number was 2,129 girls between the age of 10 and 14 years old who have given birth to babies. We also have a figure of 20 backstreet abortions with babies left abandoned daily in just the region I live in, which is Gauteng, with illegal abortions taking place. And your challenge is that it provides evidence. If girls as young as 10, 11, 12, 11 years old give birth to babies, that is evidence of statutory rape. The problem with that is, again, the non-reporting and the fact that the perpetrators are not being prosecuted. And, you know, that is an undeniable outcry to show what is the state of domestic violence, child sexual abuse, intimate partner violence in our country, if this is the kind of evidence that emerge. So we do have a global crisis, and it has been a global crisis for a significant amount of time. And we are at our wits' ends, considering how many interventions have happened. United Nations Women, violence against children, so many NGOs campaigning tirelessly, all the work that's being done, the committees that are being established, all of the work that's being done without any reduction. In fact, you'll also, I don't know if you've seen the statistics that the child sex trafficking industry has overtaken the revenue of the drug trade. And there, yes, poorer countries are affected more adversely because poor children disappear more easily without the necessary processes in place. And then, of course, you've also seen the escalation in online child sex pornography, which is staggering if you look at the numbers of the Internet Watch Foundation and the others, that you can see what a concern it is to the extent to which our society demonstrates the moral decline, that there's absolutely no conscience if you look at the numbers, because the numbers don't lie. If you look at the hits on these pages, we need to see that we as a society need to come together. And somehow there must be a way to find solutions, because at the moment, the programs and interventions that are being in place is very much top down. We don't have sufficient community, bottom upwards approaches, and the predominant theme across the world, lack of funding. We had our president in the State of the Nation address stating millions for this and billions for that. But when it came to gender-based violence, we acknowledged to be a national crisis. No figure was mentioned. No numbers were mentioned committed to addressing this issue. And I think that is where the core problem lies, is the funding that's not being allocated.
Great, Corne. Thank you for both your passion and for bringing forward that it's not a problem that's getting better. It seems to be getting worse in some ways, and that I think what's interesting in part of what you're saying is that there's been too much of a top-down and not enough of a bottom-up approach to trying to resolve the problem. So speaking of that, that's a good transition. We're now going to get some perspectives from different parts of the world, and I'm really happy to have. The Fundación Levántate Mujer, which is a nonprofit based in Bolivia, joining us to talk about this problem because they are dealing with it at a grassroots basis. And so we're going to go to Mauge first, who is joining us from Bolivia, to talk a little bit about what they do and the problems that they're essentially facing. So Mauge, and she's going to be speaking in Spanish, so I hope you have your captions turned on.
Muy buenos días a todos. Mi nombre es María Eugenia. Em, bueno, yo trabajo en la Fundación Levántate Mujer. Nosotros somos una obra de la Congregación de las Hermanas del Buen Pastor. El trabajo que se viene realizando desde hace bastante tiempo, hace bastantes años aquí en Bolivia desde la congregación, es principalmente apoyar a mujeres, ¿no? Y en ese sentido, un poquito le voy a hablar de estadísticas que hemos venido, que se ha venido teniendo desde la pasada gestión en Bolivia, ¿no? Al ser un país latino, sabemos que el tema de la violencia machista es muy fuerte en nuestro país. El año pasado, bueno, hemos cerrado el 2025 con un total de 25.716 casos que corresponden principalmente a lo que es violencia familiar o doméstica, ¿no? En Bolivia, las víctimas en su mayoría son mujeres entre 40 años, de 21 años, de 30 años, ¿no? ¿Por qué les hablo de esto? Porque justamente en esta etapa las mujeres están en una vida productiva y también de vida familiar activa, ¿no? Porque la mayoría de ellas tienen sus hijos, han conformado familias, se están formando, se puede decir, ¿no? Están teniendo hijos y en ese sentido también ahí vamos viendo lo que es la reproducción de los roles y de los estereotipos de género, ¿no? Entonces, nosotros como fundación lo que queremos hacer es principalmente fortalecer y apoyar a las mujeres víctimas de violencia. En Bolivia existe un número alto de violencia contra las mujeres. Es por esa razón que nosotros como fundación hemos venido teniendo diferentes proyectos que apoyan, ¿no? Entre eso está lo que es justamente el centro terapéutico, donde nosotros reparamos o tratamos, ¿no?, de acompañar y reparar a mujeres que han vivido situaciones de violencia. Bueno, en ese sentido, estas mujeres a veces les es un poco difícil que ellas vayan saliendo adelante. Necesitan un apoyo constante, un apoyo frecuente de estas instituciones que trabajamos en la defensa de los derechos, pero también de las instancias públicas que están obligadas por ley a cumplir la norma, ¿no? En ese sentido, lo que queremos hacer también, bueno, lo que se hace a partir de esto es trabajar con instancias promotoras y receptoras de denuncias. Las instancias promotoras son aquellas obligadas por ley que recepcionan este tipo de casos. Pero como tenemos el machismo es estructural, lo decimos en Bolivia, porque está en todos los niveles del Estado. ¿Qué pasa entonces? Que es un poco complicado que una mujer, por ejemplo, pueda ir a denunciar y que realmente pueda ser acogida como se debe en estas instancias promotoras o receptoras de denuncia, ¿no? Muchas veces se minimiza su situación o su caso, muchas veces también sucede que lamentablemente es revictimizada, tiene que ir de una instancia a otra a poder contar su misma situación de violencia porque no se le ha entendido bien o no se le ha tomado adecuadamente la denuncia, ¿no? Entonces, eso es por un lado con las autoridades que deberían apoyar y acompañar y recepcionar su denuncia adecuadamente, ¿no? Por otro lado, está también en cómo nosotros apoyamos, digamos, o cómo la misma sociedad o las mismas mujeres pueden buscar apoyo en otras instancias o en otros lugares, ¿no? Tenemos una sociedad donde sí se ha naturalizado bastante la violencia y hay que trabajar con las mujeres para desnaturalizar la violencia. Entonces, los centros terapéuticos que maneja la fundación trabajan en la desnaturalización de la violencia de las mujeres y también de sus familias, pero también se involucra en este espacio a lo que son los varones, ¿no? Varones que voluntariamente asisten y buscan un espacio donde puedan trabajar sus masculinidades hegemónicas, ¿no? En ese sentido, se trata de apoyar. También lo que trata la normativa, bueno, de nuestro país es que se pueda hacer una atención integral a las mujeres desde las instancias del Estado, pero también muchas instituciones hemos intentado también trabajar en esa misma línea, ¿no? De poder dar un apoyo integral a las mujeres. ¿Qué nos puede ayudar o qué nos ha ayudado mucho a nosotros como fundación es el empoderamiento de las mujeres a nivel personal desde el centro terapéutico, pero también el empoderamiento económico de las mujeres, ¿no? Si ustedes ven en las estadísticas, muchas mujeres no se separan, por ejemplo, de sus agresores y es por el tema económico, porque dependen 100%, y esto tiene también que ver con los roles de género, ¿no? Que el varón es el proveedor. Entonces, muchas mujeres no generan sus propios recursos económicos. Cuando vienen a estos espacios donde se fortalece a las mujeres, se trabaja en el empoderamiento a nivel personal, pero también a nivel económico, ¿no? Ellas tienen que ver que sí pueden generar sus propios recursos económicos, creer en sus habilidades y capacidades para poder de alguna manera generar sus propios recursos y tomar decisiones sin que esté mediando la presión de la parte económica. Eso es uno de los puntos, obviamente, ¿no? No es el todo, pero sí tenemos, eso es una de las cosas que nosotros como fundación hemos venido fortaleciendo. La otra parte es que también conformamos redes de mujeres líderes, ¿no? Acabando lo que es la parte terapéutica o concluyendo las 4 fases que nosotros trabajamos desde el centro terapéutico, conformamos mujeres líderes, ¿no? Ellas ya han salido de este proceso, han iniciado una nueva vida y otras ya se han encaminado adecuadamente en lo que es vivir una vida sin violencia, libre de violencia, ¿no? Entonces, estas mujeres se vuelven un referente para nosotros para conformar nuevos grupos de mujeres donde también hay mujeres víctimas de violencia y ellas pueden hablar de cómo han salido y cómo han superado la situación de violencia y otras mujeres pueden verlas como un referente o como un modelo a seguir, ¿no? Que sí se puede salir de la situación de violencia. Es más o menos como nosotros vamos trabajando desde la Fundación Levántate Mujer. Y bueno, por eso justamente había invitado a Angélica Linares, que es una de las líderes que se ha venido formando en similar en manera que les he venido explicando, ¿no?
Mauge, we're going to pause for a moment to kind of move around, but we're going to come back to Angelica so that Angelica can speak and provide her perspective. So it would be great. So we're going to be kind of gathering perspectives from different parts of the world here, and would love to hear from Maria Jareta, who is joining us from Brazil. And she's going to talk about the situation in Brazil when it comes to gender-based violence and the family. Go ahead, Maria.
Thank you, Paul. Well, hello, everyone. When Paul asked me to give my perspective on this matter, I thought about searching for some data because and give some perspective of from having a family here in Brazil. So I have some close family members that have suffered with gender-based violence, and I know this is a serious matter. And here in Brazil, I think to understand gender-based violence, we need to understand first how our homes and how our history was built, because more than half of Brazilian households are headed by women. They are not only the, the emotional supporters of their families, but they are also the financial supporters, providers of their family. I was searching for some data, as I said, and approximately 8 million mothers are considered solo mothers. We here in Brazil we called mães solos because, like I said, they are the caregivers and they are the primary providers of their family. And for decades here in Brazil, domestic violence was considered a private family matter. And this is very historical. I was thinking about was what the previous person was talking about, and I think Bolivia and Brazil has a lot of similar things about this issue. We also suffered with the culture of machismo, as she was saying, which is basically sexism, and this influences a lot on the situation here in Brazil. And for decades, we even have a saying here in Brazil, an awful saying, that we say, em briga de marido e mulher, ninguém mete a colher, which it means in a fight between a husband and a wife, we don't interfere. This is a very popular saying here in Brazil. And like and people are used to it. If we see a couple fighting on the streets, and it doesn't matter if it's just words or it comes to physical violence as well, people usually don't interfere because they think it's a private matter between the couple or between the family that is going through that. So this is a very hazard way of thinking for our society, because we allow those kind of things to happen when we think this way. And when thinking about the impacts of for a family, for family members, like I said, most of the families here in Brazil are headed by women. And when we talk about when women suffers violence, is not just one person that is being hurt, but the entire family unity gets um, gets hurt. Because, for example, in 70% of the cases of domestic violence, children were present in the situation, and they see the abuse, which creates a cycle of trauma that can lead generations, and it normalizes what happened. And last year, for example, 1,400 women were victims of femicide, and this left more than 1,600 children without mothers. So, because these mothers were often the solo providers, these children lost their safety, their home, their future. So this hurt all of the family structure, because women are oftenly the main provider, the main structure of the family. Our strongest tool here in Brazil, I even mentioned to Paul through Facebook, our Facebook chat. We have a law here in Brazil that is called Maria da Penha. It's named after a woman who survived two murder attempts from her ex-husband, and she fought like for about 15 years for justice. And then through that, this law was created to protect women, specifically with domestic violence, regarding domestic violence. And this law changed everything, because it moved the domestic violence from a private uh, matter, as I said before, to a human right crime, to a human's right, to a I forgot the word now, but to this crisis, it changed the perspective. And for example, it created the urgent protective measures. For example, this we with this law, we try to remove the abusers from the home within 48 hours. And we also have specialized police stations just for women, just to help women. Of course, there are a lot of things to improve, even with this law, because we have this tool, but we need to move from the paper to the safety in the streets. We need to bring more, I think, more specialized police and shelters to more rural areas and small towns. Because, for example, the reality of a woman living in São Paulo which is the capital of my state, is different from a woman living in the suburbs or in the countryside or in favelas. So there's still this matter. It's not just gender based, but is also financial based, and um, even we can also talk about racial based, because black people suffer with this issue as well, and in a more intense way here in Brazil. And like I said, I think there are a lot of things similar to Brazil and Bolivia, for example, because it's not just a matter of enforcing, reinforcing, but also changing the social thinking about this topic, because machismo is still very strong here. People still believe that men are superior to women, and that women are um, like some kind of um, I'm sorry, I forgot the word, but there's that. And also I think I would like to talk about the economic aspect of it, because
Maria,
it's not.
Maria, can we come back to you? Because I'd like to, we're definitely going to come
Sure.
back to you. And you can, I want to encourage all of you who want to talk. We are going to have an open discussion. And so there will be an opportunity for us to kind of hear from a variety of people who haven't yet spoken. And I just want to remind all of you, our interns especially, for whom this is a one of your tasks during this discussion, is to comment and ask questions and post them to the Zoom chat, and to do so now, because that's going to then help structure the open discussion. Um, we're going to turn to Sandy or Bridget Cabrera Olivas, who's joining us, as I mentioned, from Arizona, but is from Mexico, and she's going to tell her story. And she's kindly, with her children, her son and her daughter, actually his two daughters, and one of her daughters is our intern. They are twins. You may not notice, but and they're joining us separately, so they're on kind of separate screens here. But we're going to have her speak. But before we do that, I just need to um, take screenshots before I forget, because we like to kind of convey to people who's participating and so on when we share this out publicly. So if you could turn off, for those of you who have your cameras off, please turn them back on for a moment. And on three, I'm going to ask you to smile. Um, one, two, three, smile. Fantastic. And let me do that one more time as well. I would just want to emphasize, if you have your camera off and you're able to turn it on, please do turn it on. On three, one, two, three, smile. Fantastic. Thank you very much. Okay. So Sandy, it's your turn.
Hi everyone.
You may, yeah, you may have two different devices on at the same time. And if you do, turn the other one off, and that should get rid of that echo. You want to try again? Ah, I think I have it. I'll get rid of it. Hold on a second here. Remove. There we go. Okay. So that should get rid of the problem. Go ahead and speak. Oh, you're still muted. Let me ask you to unmute. Let's see if that, you can go ahead and turn yourself on, your volume on. Okay, I think you're good. Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Sandy. I have three kids. Bridget and Andrea, they are twins. They are 22, 21, almost 22. And then my son is 19. So I suffer violence. Well, I got married when I was 22. Um, so I suffer violence from my ex-husband. Um, so I guess I start getting violence from him since the first year of marriage, maybe. Um, and probably manipulation, I guess. And um, one of the probably the first time that I uh, went through violence, it was when um, oh,
Hold on a second. I'm going to mute this person who has their. You should all have your yourself on mute when you're not speaking. Go ahead, Sandy.
oh. So the violence, I think it was the first time. It was before I got pregnant with the girls. Um, just something mild, I guess. It was just trying to control me, what to do, what to say, if I smile or don't smile, things like that. When I went to the hospital to get birth to the girls, one of my family members went to visit and he was mad. So I think I don't know if it's a protocol at the hospital to ask if there's any violence in the family or something, or they notice something. So they asked me, and of course I denied because I was just like, just give birth. And so I denied. He was just like trying to make me feel guilty about family members go and visit. One of the other times that I got um, he was abusive by, I think the girls were like maybe 4 3 4 months. uh, he was just got mad at me because I don't even remember why, and he just dragged me out of the house and kicked me out of the house, and I was holding one of the girls in my arms, and he tried to keep me out. So the neighbor heard the noise because he pushed me against the door when he tried to kick me out, and the neighbor just hear the noise, so he called the police. And of course I denied because I didn't have a place to go, and back in the days I wasn't aware of any places to go, or who should I ask for help, or if it was any institutions they can help violence or things like that. So I deny again when the police was there. And I guess if you don't say if you don't say anything, you don't they don't I mean they don't do anything against the other person. So they left, and then it was through the years I have a lot different ways to get um, abuse, and it was through like controlling the way that I say things or do things or not do things. Um, if I don't work, is because I don't support him and I don't care about the family. Or if I leave, he's not gonna be helping me with um, support with economic support. Um, and then if he left me because we can get the divorce, he's not gonna be helping me because he have to take care of himself, and he's not gonna be helping me with the kids. Or if I move out, he's not gonna be helping me. So I was kind of like trapped by that kind of manipulation, I guess. He also um, abused me physically so many times, and it was in front of the kids. That was when the kids were age probably babies till 4. years old, and he got kicked out of the country. So I moved back with him because I was alone with 3 kids, and um, I I think I didn't have no help, and I don't want to ask anybody to help me with my problem. So I moved with him to Mexico, and the violence continued over there. So I decided to just take my kids and move back to Arizona with them. And I start from zero over here with my brother's help and my mom's help. But because of the psychological abuse, um, I just feel like I was a burden to everyone. It's been 20 years since that, and I cannot take it out of my head. I still feel I I'm just a burden to people, so I try to do everything to get out of the violence. But I think that's you also need some therapy. And so because this other lady was talking about um, help, I think as a person being in a violent and environment, environment, yeah, uh, you need also not just economic help, but also like psychological help, because the kids can learn from that. So I learned that from my parents, and probably my parents learned that from their parents. So it's just a chain that you have to break. So I always think in my head, I don't want my kids to go through the same situation as I was growing up with my parents. So I decided to just leave that environment with my ex-husband, so that way my son doesn't learn that it's okay to hit a woman or make her feel like she's worthless or just a tool in there in the house. And I don't want my girls to learn it's okay to a guy just be violent in different ways. So I decided to break the cycle. So I tried to give them a better life. I got married again, and my husband is a very nice person. And I think because of the psychological things that I have in my head, sometimes I feel like one day he's gonna get mad at me because I say something or I behave in a way that I try to not be, I mean, I just don't want him. I feel like he wants to punch me or something, but he's never gonna do that. So I think my kids are learning how to be a nice person and kind and understanding. So that's what kind of like happened in my life. I know other women went through worse things. So
Bridget, or Sandy, I want to thank you for your courage. Thank you for your resilience because what you face is not hard and it's not easy, and you had the courage to leave that situation and move to a different country or return to a different country and start from scratch for the better of your kids. So I think it goes without saying that you're not a burden to anybody. You're an asset to not just your family, but the wider world. And this context, you having the courage and the fortitude to speak in this context is really important. So you're a leader. And I think that's what Levántate, the Fundación Levántate Mujer was pointing out is that part of the answer to this problem is building women's leadership just like yours. And you coming to speak to all of us like this about your situation is leadership. So really thank you for what you've done. Um, can we have your either of your children or your 3 children speak? And I'm going to try to control my emotions in the process here. Sorry. Either of
Okay.
your kids want to speak, or any of your 3 kids?
Yeah. So if Andrea wants to speak as well, she can. I'm Bridget, signed in through my account. Um, seeing my mom be so resilient through the years. It's very, gosh, I don't know how to say it. It's been very like a proud moment for me where, when we were younger, I don't know if Andrea feels like this as well, but I feel like I only experienced like the good in my life, where my mom hid that so well what she was going through, that I didn't see any of that negativity ever growing up. A lot of my memories are happy, her taking us out to eat, taking us out where we can, even if she was secretly financially not very stable because of what she escaped. Um, and now me and my sister and my brother are able to do things like go to college and, you know, um, not face things that my mom faced when she was our age, me and Andrea's age. So it's just, I'm very proud to call her my mom.
And I know it's difficult for your son. I can tell, but if he's willing to speak, it would be great. But don't feel obliged.
I think that for me personally, my mom has been my biggest inspiration. She has sacrificed. She has sacrificed so much to get us to where we need to go, and I wanted to let her know that not everything she's done is in vain. That we want to redirect all the energy that she has taken into something good to benefit ourselves, our close family, and to benefit the greater world. So I want to see some change so that bigger damages and other social issues don't continue to happen and to negatively affect people, and that they can feel like they can overcome these issues as well.
Great. And thank you all of you for speaking. I know it's not easy. It's not easy for me to get through this either. But I really appreciate your voices and your courage in coming out and talking about this. Andrea, did you want to share anything?
Yeah, so I think the reason through like the life experiences that we had, it really inspired me to pursue my degree in global affairs, and specifically pursuing a lot of study with sociology, which is specifically with gender, because I think if we really understood what gender meant and that it's a social construct, I think a lot of these things would like not be so prominent, and violence against women wouldn't be so prominent, especially defeating the system, which is patriarchy, and dismantling that is very important to alleviating these issues that really affect not just one person, it affects so many people. It's not just women that it affects also men. And there's this vicious cycle that happens. And so, and even it has affected the way I see myself and also relationships in the future. I personally, like my life experiences personally have made me not want to pursue any like romantic relationships with men, actually. Because I'm not saying that, of course, it's not all gonna be all men, but it's like you never, for me, it's just sort of like I want to focus my career and my life goals to helping women and helping just people in general with the things that, being the voice of the vulnerable, which was like my mom, she was vulnerable. And like kind of like being her voice in things, and also inspired me to, work with your organization, Learning Life, because these dialogues are very important to have. So,
Great. So clearly, Sandy, you've been inspirational to your kids. So thank you for your perspectives. I'm going to come back to Corney, who's joining us again from South Africa, to see if you have any thoughts that you want to respond to the dialogue thus far.
Yes, thank you, Paul. You see, what I've seen globally and listening to all these conversations is that we have a very common narrative. Although we have socioeconomic and cultural differences and all of these things across the world, the same theme dominates. first, of course, it's the fear of the perpetrator, and then the financial dependence. That's the common theme. Most women stay in abusive relations because they are financially dependent on the perpetrator, even in cases where they are aware that their children are being sexually abused. They still remain in those abusive relationships. So we've got to say, I know we don't have a lot of time. We are engaging in this dialogue here. So I want to mention there were several questions about how can we, what can we, and one of the single most important things is that, there's a Latin saying, quita quet consentire videtur. He who is silent is taking to agree. And unfortunately, even in our society, we have got the sentiment that people do not want to get involved. You mentioned in your brave narrative, Sandy, that neighbors came and called the police and so forth. But in how many cases do bystanders not come forward? For various reasons. Also, fear of the perpetrator, don't want it, it's troublesome, don't want to testify in court, don't want to get involved. But even family members who are aware do not step forward, again, because your other big problem, besides patriarchy, of course, is stigma. So the stigma is what perpetuates the silence. People feel ashamed, and then you also, of course, have the issue of victim blaming. So if we now want to say, let's get to the point. If we make the assumption that there are more victims than perpetrators, or more innocent people than guilty parties, surely at some stage there must be the realization among all of us that by speaking out, by standing up when you observe it, already can make a difference. Now we say, okay, it's uncomfortable, we're sitting in a social setting, it's neighbors, it's family members, but look at what is happening with the perpetration of gender-based violence online, right? Like I mentioned to you earlier, we've got millions of people actively perpetrating GBV online in the form of online child sex pornography or child sex trafficking. Why is it for us as a society then not possible, if we don't want to speak out to the neighbor? Why aren't we more active on social media where we can have a voice? We can even have an anonymous voice to some extent. So why aren't we, if we want to change things, if we want to shift this global social decline that is happening, why aren't we more active? Why aren't we seeing on X? Why aren't we activists on Instagram? Why are we not speaking out where we can, where we cannot directly be touched? But if you look at the content on GBV, on social media, it is not proactive. It's maybe reactive, but people don't even want to speak out about it there. But that is something we can do. We can create a activist move, not another NGO, but we can start speaking out about it, at least on social media, because victims are isolated. Remember, most victims never report their cases. Most victims, we're talking 90-something%, never report the cases because they don't feel free to do so. Fear of judgment, fear of the perpetrator, fear of the legal system, fear of the financial resources. But surely we can do better than that. If we can start with more active bystander approaches, if we can reach out to families and start working bottom up and say, but there's something wrong with this value system. There was very few successful GBV programs. I'm working with another colleague who is in Sweden, Professor Gustav Dalal. They've done a lot of intervention studies also in poor countries because poverty is also a common theme. There was a study done in Nepal where they actually intervened. There were two successful interventions. The one was that the women, who are mostly the victims, had their contact numbers of the neighbors on their cell phone, and there was a little app where they could press a button. That's in the event that GBV happened, somebody would knock on the door. Hi, Mary, are you okay? And that would kind of just pause. That was something that worked. The other intervention was that in the community, the men stood up. So if there were perpetrators of GBV, and now we're talking obviously villages and smaller communities, we're not talking suburbs with sky, but in smaller communities where the men stood up and the perpetrator would then be excluded from that community. That was one successful intervention. Another successful intervention was that they actually taught children nursery rhymes about the experiences of GBV, which they used, and that touched people to the extent that communities took action because it came from the children. But those are just examples of bottom-up approaches we can use to give a voice in a way that doesn't provoke the wrath of perpetrators. There are different ways of more subtle interventions. I've got a PhD student now who's busy doing a study in a poor community where we are trying an intervention model. So we need to encourage studies on GBV intervention at our universities. As academics, we need to promote that. And then the other, obviously, the key issue that it keeps coming back to is lack of funding. Lack of places of safety to go to. Even in South Africa, we got the shelter movement, the national shelter movement, but there is not nearly enough places to accommodate people or for women to flee to. Then they've got 3 months to stay there. Then it's the issue of taking children out of school and relocating children. So if we really want to show our seriousness, let's start social media awareness, speaking out, and making it possible for victims to come forward. There also needs to be stronger community intervention. And there, I'm sorry, but men need to also come forward and speak out because there's the silence of the men. And by the way, at the beginning, Adrian was mentioning about the perpetrators of violence against men. I work with an organization called Tears Foundation where emergency calls do come in. And they told me in January that there's a slight increase in men calling for help against GBV as well. Because as we all know, GBV refers to any emotional, psychological, verbal, financial, physical, or other sexual abuse perpetrated against another person because of the gender. So the emotional and the psychological component are often underestimated because these are precursors to the physical violence. So I'm just saying, if we want to do something, we can start using our voices.
Yeah.
Even if we start subtly on social media, let's just start doing something because we can do something.
Corne, thank you for your passion and the specifics here about ways that we can respond. I do want to get more perspectives from Africa, and we do have some folks here who are joining us from Africa, but we also want to hear again from Fundación Levántate Mujer, because they have at least one woman from Bolivia who's experienced violence, who is planning to speak. But I want to switch to Africa for a moment and see if there is anybody from Africa, including Leroy in Liberia. We have Eric who is joining for us from Burundi, and Joshua from Uganda. These are some of our family diplomats. Do any of you want to offer some perspective from your own experience in your country? Joshua, who's joining us from Uganda, go ahead.
Thank you so much, Paul. 2 weeks, I traveled to northern Uganda. Now, Uganda is in East Africa, for those who may not be aware. And I was working on a small project, a climate change adaptation project with the communities here. But one thing I realized that it was beyond that project. Trying to interact with these people, I saw many people, because the project was inquiring to involve a number of women and and generally the community. But most of them were affected by gender-based violence. In Karamoja, before I traveled here, the government had released a report that it's one of the poorest regions, of course, in Uganda. Uganda itself is a growing economy, but now if it also ranks from its multidimensional poverty index report, a region which is very poor and very vulnerable. When you reach here, you just see a number of social and issues. And now I'll just point out the gender-based violence. Young girls forced to marriages, as below as 15, female um, mutilation, and all the things are coming from their long-term patriarchal history, because it's a region that is very deeply rooted in these cultural norms, and you find it is left behind. Semi-arid, of course, it's affected by this drought. It's a semi-arid arid area, and this number of issues coupled with gender based violence, leave alone the conflict or the castle wrestling that affects the region. But you find the women battling, fighting with their men, and you get to ask what really causes this. Because when I was trying to join up this call, I also wanted to dress up like them. This is part of their culture, where they put up like them as well, because they stretch up to Kenya, from Uganda, Kenya, and I think part of South Sudan. And they battle with men, they keep fighting, they call themselves warriors. They go and raid cattle, and these number of conflicts, and as I was listening to this conversation like this, I saw that the causes of gender-based violence really cut across, especially on the African continent and Uganda inclusive. But I'm very happy that these voices have started to raise up, especially from the previous presenters, who has really cautioned us to put up our voices. And I really want to say thank you to Paul for bringing us together. Maybe one or two voices can be aired out, and maybe our government and policymakers can come up with this solution. Thank you. That's something brief I wanted to share from Uganda.
Great.
Especially with the Kalamoja district where I'm currently.
Great, Joshua.
Yes.
Thank you. She's joining us from the Kampala region, the capital of Uganda. We have Leroy, who is joining us from another capital, but of Monrovia, in Liberia. Leroy, go ahead and speak. He's going to have his camera off because I think his connection is not as good. Leroy?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. I want to say hello to everybody, and I'm currently speaking from Monrovia, Liberia. And I want to say Liberia has done little well over the past few years after the new leadership took over, with the banning of the female genital mutilation and few other stuffs, inclusion of females in strategic positions in government, and some other stuff that when it comes to addressing the issue of the gender-based violence. But there are a whole lot of things that still need to be done. Sodomizing of boys are still on the increase, rape still on the increase, and so many things that I can talk about. But before going into some of those stuff in details, I will like to talk about the perspectives of people within the country currently. So there are two methodologies about gender-based violence in Liberia. So other people think, especially the boys or the men, rather not the boys, but the men, think that in the long run, the issue of gender-based violence discussing and favoring female will cause the boys major damage than it is, or it is being projected right now. So other people think that the discussion should not be limited to only women, but we should include boys and every other person into it, because sodomization or sodomizing boys is also part of the gender-based violence. Even if it is done by the same gender, it's also part of the discussion. So there is a greater division when it comes to that also in the country currently. So about that, people are still discussing it. Currently, we do not have a stable statistics about how these things are being done and on what still skills they are being done. But what I can say right now from my observation and including other research that we've done over the past time and reviewing some people works over the past time is that the issue of gender-based violence is on the increase still in Liberia, especially in my university that I can talk a whole lot about. You will have instructors, kind of, engaging females because put in for the issue of having to sleep with them, after which they can give them grade because some of our females here in Liberia are naturally strong when it comes to the mathematical areas, maybe let's say physics, chemistry, and mathematics in general. So sometimes instructors that are teaching the courses can take advantage of them because of that. So it's actually affecting them, even though the university sometimes put out some warning notes all over the campuses of the University of Liberia and other universities around. But people cannot still report the cases because they fear that the universities is a society by itself, that when you go against a single instructor, the entire instructors of the university will go against you and they will make you to never graduate from the university. So with that perspective and that fear in mind, most of the girls fear of, kind of staying at the university and not graduating so they can keep those things to themselves and just discuss it with their comrades of peers at the university. So it's really, really affecting the girls at various universities across Liberia. It came to a point where even myself, I told myself that none of my female friends, or should I say my siblings, will ever attend university in Liberia because of what I've seen, what I've heard, and what I've observed in my environment as a university student. So another one is also the issue of, just engaging the, let me say, gender-based violence on the surface of the society. It seems like the government is really engaging the elite, not the root of the problem. So I've had cases where two of my former classmates had been killed by their former boyfriends. Okay, so they left the relationship, and after a few times they came back and kind of engaged their exes. And when those guys refused to go back to them, they end up killing them, and getting away with it. Some of them can do it and run away for their lives because they fear of being arrested by the security personnel. So these things are actually affecting our society. And just recent time, I think a month ago, there were a massive protests about rape, the increase of rape across Liberia. I was actually also part of the campaign against rape in Liberia. And this process is not only about rape, it's also about sodomizing boys, like I said from the onset. So we have been engaging from other angles like that. And we feel Liberia is not doing well when it comes to engaging the process, the problem. They will, get, it's not like Liberia government is not getting the funds that they need to engage awarenesses and even increase community policing, but they are being selfish and mean to the citizen. So that has actually affected the society greatly. So basically, I can tell you that it is on the increase, and the citizens are divided, and the citizens are disenchanted, and kind of angry with the government, wish to even rise up one day to face the government directly if they have the power to do so. So yes, I would love to speak more about this, but just to give time to other people, this is exactly what's happening currently in Liberia.
Yeah, great. Leroy, really interesting to hear your perspective. Thanks for bringing the kind of sodomization of young males into this equation about gender-based violence, but also the workplace kind of sexual extortion. We've heard this before from one of our family diplomats, whom you might remember from Nigeria, who said that it's very common at universities for, I think, mostly male professors to demand sexual services in exchange for grades and for passing a course. And Corneille mentioned this, that kind of the workplace is a major problem and a major source of gender-based violence. It's not just the family. So great to hear some perspectives from Africa. I do want to return to Fundación Levántate Mujer to hear their perspective based upon the discussion. And also, we have, I don't know if I just want to confirm, because I believe that one of our family diplomats joined from Pakistan. Fatima, are you with us? And can you hear me? Fatima may not be. Yes.
Hi, Paul. How are you? Yeah,
Good.
I'm
I'm
here.
glad. So we're going to come back to you in a moment, but I just wanted to let you know. And then also, Tanisha, I just wanted to flag some people here to bring into the conversation. Tanisha in the conversation raised an interesting perspective. She worked in gender-based violence in the military in the United States. So would love to get your perspective there as well. So let's return to the Fundación Levántate Mujer, that's based in Bolivia. Alfredo, I believe you have somebody that and you and Mauge have somebody that you would like to speak, and I can't remember who it is exactly, but one of the survivors is willing to speak, and we'd much appreciate hearing from her.
Paul, ¿qué tal? Buenas, ¿cómo estás? Muchas gracias por el espacio, felicitaciones por promover este tipo de experiencias. Sí, actualmente está María Eugenia, ¿está doña Angélica con nosotros todavía?
Sí, está ya, doña Angélica Linares y su
Listo,
hijo.
entonces le damos paso para que nos pueda acompañar en este momento.
Bien, good. Angélica,
Aló, buenas tardes, ¿cómo están?
bien,
Ya. ¿Me escuchan? ¿Me escuchan bien? Bueno,
sí.
yo ahora me encuentro en compañía de mi hijito. Mi hijo es Gabriel, él tiene 13 años ahorita, yo tengo 41 años y bueno, pues hace mucho tiempo ya yo llego a ser parte de la Fundación Levántate Mujer aquí en Sucre. Llegué como una mujer que quería capacitarme en repostería. En Levántate Mujer capacitan a muchas mujeres en distintas ramas técnicas. Y bueno, ahí es donde comencé a ver y a identificar lo que es la violencia. Me capacitaron, aprendí bastante. Hoy en día, yo después de haber roto un ciclo de violencia, pues me encuentro ayudando a otras mujeres de la misma forma que en su momento me lo hizo la fundación. He estado leyendo, bueno, las intervenciones de las otras personas y realmente siento yo que una de las principales formas para vencer la violencia, en especial que a mí me ha funcionado, es un fortalecimiento propio, ¿no? Nosotras esas veces armábamos grupos de apoyos a mujeres. Consistía en una reunión de unas 10, 15, 20 mujeres, las cuales estábamos pasando un hecho de violencia. Y esa formación de grupos nos ha servido mucho para identificar y darnos cuenta nosotras la violencia que estábamos pasando, cualquier tipo de violencia física, sexual. A partir de eso, tuve la oportunidad de también formar de manera propia a otras mujeres en distintos barrios, hacerles este apoyo, ¿qué se puede decir? No sé, personal. Y también paralelamente realizábamos lo que era la capacitación técnica. En mi caso, lo que aprendí replicaba con otras mujeres, ¿no? Era muy interesante, era muy bonito ver a muchas mujeres que podían romper el hecho de, no sé, de ser presas económicas de la violencia y romper un ciclo de violencia y poder sustentarse ellas mismas. A mí misma me ayudó. Lo que comenzó con repostería, bueno, he ido haciéndolo más grande, llegaba a comercializar mis productos. De hecho, yo soy madre sola, obviamente me llegué a separar del padre de mi hijo y bueno, a salir adelante, ¿no? Es interesante y bueno, realmente tener resiliencia para poder salir de un círculo de violencia y poder seguir adelante. Seguidamente yo alegremente pude terminar la carrera de Derecho, soy abogada y bueno, pues sigo utilizando mi profesión para apoyar a muchas mujeres que están pasando o que han pasado lo mismo que yo en su momento. He decidido no rehacer mi vida con una pareja, tratar de abocarme más, no sé, al fortalecimiento personal, a acompañar a mi hijo, tratar de educarlo de la mejor forma posible. Él igual en su, no sé, en su medio, digamos, social como niño también, que me acompañaba a las charlas, que me acompañaba a los cursos con las otras mujeres, siempre él ha estado creciendo, digamos, entre nosotras. Es un niño que también en su, ¿cómo se puede decir?, en su entorno ha sabido impartir también talleres, también formado por la Fundación para su edad que ha habido en esto de la violencia digital. Y bueno, pues para él también ha sido una experiencia muy linda poder ser parte de esto, ¿no? Hace tanto tiempo ve a su mamá hacer estas cosas y él también dijo, pues yo también puedo, ¿no? Y realmente creo que para todas nosotras, el hecho de poder salir de un círculo de violencia, poder enfrentarnos, poder ser resilientes, mirar de otra forma el futuro es algo esperanzador, ¿no? Y obviamente que el hecho a mí personalmente de poder apoyar a otras mujeres a que hagan lo mismo, a mostrarles otra ruta de la vida, si se puede decir, no estancarnos, no como ver el fin del mundo, algo que nos ha pasado, realmente es algo que es una satisfacción personal muy, muy, muy profunda para mí, ¿no?
Mm.
Realmente,
Angelica, just because we're our time is limited, I'm gonna switch the conversation a little bit or change move to somebody else. But I do want to ask if your son, I'm not sure how old your son is, but if he's willing to say something briefly, if he would like to share his thoughts, because it sounds like he has participated in a number of meetings with you, and he may have some thoughts.
sí, sí, claro, él tiene 13 años, a ver, los presento, él es Gabriel.
Hola, ¿cómo está? Buenas tardes. Soy Gabriel Linares, parte de los brigadistas de Levántate Mujer. Y yo he conocido la fundación más yendo por el lado de mi madre, porque desde los 5 años yo iba a talleres, porque no tenía con quién quedarme sola en casa. Iba a talleres y a partir de mis 10 años, Levántate Mujer ha hecho una campaña de brigadistas. Y yo he dicho, si a mi mamá le ayudara a esa fundación, ¿por qué yo no ayudar a otros? He ido a ayudar a colegios, a más de 5 colegios, yo personalmente, y por cursos pasábamos y ayudaba a los distintos colegios con educación que ha recibido de los brigadistas. Yo personalmente me he formado con el licenciado Jimmy. Y la verdad ha sido una experiencia muy grata, ya que me he sentido muy incluido y en vez de verlo como una clase más o como una clase particular, que suele ser muy aburrido, nos ha hecho hacer dinámicas, nos ha hecho aprender de forma muy dinámica. Y nosotros igualmente, como ir a otros colegios, en vez de hacer una campaña más o que digan, ay, estos, ¿qué dirán? Hemos intentado ver y cómo agradarles a ellos y meternos en su ambiente para enseñarles y educarlos para que prevean todo lo de las redes sociales y todos los riesgos. Gracias.
Sorry, I was muted here. I'm super impressed. He is Angelica. He is 13 years old.
Sí, tiene 13 años, ha cumplido 13 años.
Yeah. So he's involved. He obviously cares. He can speak about these things, and I love the fact that the Fundación Levántate Mujer has a group, brigadiers, as they call them, who are involved in speaking about this as young people and trying to create a model so that it's not just men's leadership, but kids' leadership on this issue is really important. It's really fantastic to see that. I want to leave us with we may not, Tanisha, be able to get to you, but Tanisha, if you could just share some of your perspective in the Zoom chat based upon working in the military. But I do want to get to because that would be great, and we'll be able to share that out. But and then we're also going to be sharing out about the Facebook group that people can continue this conversation in. But I do want to bring us, because we haven't heard much from Asia. I want to bring in Fatima, who's joining us from Pakistan, and she has actually done work on gender-based violence. So she would be. It would be great to hear before I conclude the conversation here. Fatima.
Hi, Paul. How are you? How is
Oh,
everyone?
you're with your son. It's great to see.
Yeah, finally, I have one family member with me, my son, and he's so proud of me. So, today I want to talk about gender-based violence as everybody is hearing me. As you people know that gender-based violence is a violation of human rights, and it's because of abuse of power, wrong using of power. Unfortunately, I must say that in Pakistan, gender discrimination is well knitted in the fabric of our society. That's why women and transgender, they both feel they are victim of gender-based violence mostly. Um, like the physical, sexual, emotional, and psychoeconomic abuse or violence. Like if we say the example of hitting, so domestic violence is the most common in Pakistan. It's the most common abuse, and uh, even many people don't report it because of the family pressures and societal pressures. Like they bear hitting, beating, cutting, slapping, choking, and honor killing, acid throwing, even. And they bear everything. Sometimes they report it, but even reported cases are so many that they are alarming in situation. And if we talk about sexual violence, then rape, sexual assaultation, exploitation at workplace and universities. Recently, I think last week, there is a case of suicide, and the girl was harassed by the teachers. So it's ongoing process in Pakistan. And the forced marriages and child marriages as well. Like mostly, if we see the gender-based violence, the victim is always woman and transgender. So, if we talk about emotional abuse or emotional violence, forcing for anything without consent, threats, insults, and denials of deprivation, like if they stop women to do anything, they also deny it. They don't acknowledge that they are humans and we should provide them the basic needs, and denial of opportunities like education and job and health services, etc. As I have been working in the hard and tough rural areas as well, so I can see how women affected with this gender-based violence. Particularly, if I talk about the domestic violence and other violences as well. The root causes which I see is gender inequality. It's the more common issue in Pakistan. Plus the abuse of power, the societal acceptance of violence. Because like whenever we talk about our uncomfortable life or some complaints from husbands or in-laws, first of all, our family don't accept it. And we are always compelled to go back to our houses and spend that life again. Because, like, there are so many societal pressures that parents don't accept their daughters back to their home. And many of women becomes a victims of killing and acid throwing, living with their in-laws and with their husbands. And it's because of lack of respect of human rights. But I sometimes feel that they even don't consider us like women and transgender humans, because in most of the societies, even the privileged class faces these issues. And previously, as Paul knows that I have discussed in details that even the privileged and the high society females are victim of domestic violence. So this is the issue ongoing in Pakistan, and the aware even the laws are so much stronger. There are strict laws and even societal awareness, but domestic violence is still dominant in Pakistan and on alarming rate.
Mm, mm,
So I work as a training officer with different international organization I work, and apart from many things, I compel myself to go everywhere and talk about the rights of the woman
mm.
and especially their basic right of education. So I educate people until and unless they are not aware and they are not sensitized, they won't be able to help women and transgender to prevent from domestic violence or gender-based violence.
Mm. Fatima, we do need to conclude the conversation. I want to respect everybody's time, but can you do me a great favor and turn on your camera again? We'd love to see you and your son, and if you don't mind, I'd like to take a screenshot of you so that we can share
Yeah, sure.
out that
Sorry.
this is indeed family diplomacy. Um, so while Fatima's son is coming back, there you go. All right. So on three, I'm gonna have you smile. One, two, three. Thanks. Great. Thank you too. Great to see you, Fatima. Good to meet your son because I think this is the first time I've actually met your son. So
This is first time he is joining me, and he is mashallah 10 years old now. He understands everything. I make him aware about anything, and he respects women a lot.
That's great. I'm glad that the men in this conversation. First of all, I want to thank everybody for participating, but perhaps particularly for the boys and men being part of this conversation because we are clearly need to be part of the solution. I also want to thank Corney for joining us from South Africa, kind of speaking passionately to the broader issue, and um, one of our interns who presented, Adrian Mata, one of our former interns who presented on this problem of gender-based violence across the world. Um, I placed in the Zoom chat, I leave you with 5 ways that you can connect with family diplomacy because we are going to be returning this year to gender-based violence, but next time we're going to be turning towards the violence against lesbians, gays, bisexuals, transgendered people, which is alive and well, unfortunately, in the world. And so we will be talking about this again. We are also, I just want to remind you, focused on 5 major issues impacting families across the world, and they are poverty, war, climate change, gender-based violence, and the internet. Um, and so the upcoming dialogues from now until once a month through November are going to be dealing with these different issues. The 5 ways in which you can participate, and I encourage you to take part, are listed here. To join our Family Diplomacy Initiative on Facebook, if you're not already part of the group, please do, because we'll be posting this dialogue, both the video record and screenshots from the dialogue at our Facebook group. And it's a chance for you to continue the conversation there, to share information and share perspectives. Second, you can follow us on YouTube to get the recording of this meeting and all the other dialogues that we have. Third, if you're not part of our email list, I encourage you to join our email list. That allows you to get more information about the dialogues when they come up, and we'll share out the report of the dialogues. If you want a deeper experience with the work that we do, we encourage you as to volunteer as a family diplomat or family diplomacy ambassador. And lastly, you can join this broader community that we have that we are developing, which involves all of our programs and trying to avoid to advance the voice of ordinary people and democracy and diplomacy across the world. So with that said, I have a meeting with our family diplomacy ambassadors on this Zoom right afterwards. To those of you FDAs who are joining us right after this, I'm going to turn off the meeting and then I'll turn it right back on. But you can just stay on the Zoom. I'll be right back with you. For the rest of you, thank you. And I just want to remind you that the next dialogue in May is on May 17th, same time, 12 to 1:30. Washington, D.C., New York time. And that dialogue, I believe, is going to be on war. And actually, one of our, I'm not going to be presenting that dialogue. Somebody else here, Tice Jones, is going to be moderating the dialogue for us. So, okay, everybody, it looks like my internet connection is unstable. Thank you, everybody, for your participation and for your courage, for those of you who spoke about your experiences. Bye, everyone.
Bye bye, everybody.
No
Bye.
problem. Chao.